Good afternoon and happy Sunday, fantasy football fans. Welcome once again to the Gridiron Ratings ReDraft Fantasy Football Show. I am your host, Jeff DiMatteo. With me, as always, is tentatively senior fantasy football analyst, Matt McCarthy. Matt, how are you?
Excellent. In the pre-show, you said you're going to teach me how to play fantasy football today, so I'm really waiting for it. So rock and roll there, Jeff. You're on the hot seat.
We both know I'm not teaching anybody how to do anything. All right, so we've got a wide open pack show here. We want to try and hit all 32 teams with a key question for all 32 teams. So we're going to skip all the intro stuff. We did have some injuries and some things to talk about. We're going to try and catch all that at the end. And some of it might even be hitting these questions. So with that, let's get right to it. Arizona Cardinals. We've got James Conner, Chase Edmonds. Who's the better value for 2020?
I'm still on the – again, I'm curious to see what you say, but I still think it's James Conner. I'm very much worried about – and we've talked about this. Where does the more production come for Edmonds? He was better in his receiving role. We saw him do pretty well in that sort of space. Now, I look at a lot of full PPR stuff, so Chase Edmonds is better on the points per game basis. Cool, but one is going about a round and a half, 2 rounds earlier than the other. So currently I lean Conner, and really the main issue for him is just health. But one thing that James Conner has brought in that we didn't really see out of Kenyon Drake is he can catch passes. He's been on pace for past 3 seasons. If he stayed healthy, played a whole full 16 game, which is a real daunting task for him, really. Around 50 receptions per year. And we added other receivers to this Arizona team. Where does Chase Edmonds get better for 2021?
I don't think he does. I'm actually with you. I'm going to take Conner. I'm actually avoiding the backfield completely, but give me Conner because I'm just not a Chase Edmonds guy. He just doesn't get enough touches. And even with the stuff he does get, he's just not efficient enough. He's not going to take 5 or 6 touches and make you fantasy relevant. He needs 16, 17 touches to be really relevant. And I just don't see it in this offense. So give me a hard pass on Arizona, but if I'm forced to pick, give me Conner.
Sounds good.
So Atlanta Falcons, Kyle Pitts, north of pick 50. Now, I've seen his ADP, depending on the spot, bouncing between 36 and 48.
I bet that like one is the highest point, like the peak. So yeah, listen, I did these notes, so I know what I wanted to say. But if you don't understand it, I get it.
Well, I want to make sure that we're spelling this out for the group. So north of pick 50 would mean you're picking him higher, right? So if he's going at pick 38 or 48 or 39 or whatever that looks like, how good of a season is needed for him to return value?
Yeah, he's pick 46 right now, and he's moving away from Andrews is past pick 50. He's at 51, and Hawkinson is pick 60. The further Hawkinson drops, I actually really like Hawkinson. But Pitts, he really, and we've talked about it. I've brought up, I like bringing up how little tight ends in their rookie season have really been able to become like dominant or even like good fantasy options. I understand that Kyle Pitts is different, but he really needs to hit all the hallmarks to actually come through and make this the season for us to kind of want him to be. And again, I say us, and it's not you or I, it's really everyone at large. Again, only 5 rookie tight ends that going back to 1998 ever had more than 600 yards. 10 have had 70 targets. We're not even seeing a lot of work for these guys. Jeremy Shockey has like all the rookie records in these, like in this time frame within that 2002 season. So it's a little bit different for me to really think, even if he hits all the hallmarks and hits all like the career marks for any rookie tight end, he's still around like wide receiver 15. Was like if I even give him 11 touchdowns to beat Gronk's 10 back in 2010, it's still like an Amari Cooper, which is pretty good. It's around 235 fantasy points if you have him break every single rookie record. But that's also him breaking every single rookie record with 11 touchdowns. So right. I don't, again, Dynasty is a different story. We're just talking about 2021. Not particularly someone I'm looking for in that range. Only really like in tight end premium am I even thinking it. Like in that scoring system, am I thinking of him at pick 45, 46? So really, if I'm having running backs and receivers have their normal allotment of points, it's really tough for me to really ever click the button. I have very little shares of him this year for sure.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a stat line.
Please do.
93 targets.
Okay.
48 receptions.
Okay.
756 yards, 4 touchdowns. How do you feel about that stat line for pick number 46, 48 inside the top 50?
And it's not good. probably compared to like receivers, because really we're looking, because you're trying to talk me up of Kyle Pitts as a receiver, and that's kind of a lackluster stat line. It's probably like his average or some sort of. Go ahead.
Fun fact: that's Calvin Johnson's rookie year, and that's the big comp everybody has. Kyle Pitts to Calvin Johnson.
That's right. You're actually not the first person to say this. It's because you're if we're talking about Kyle Pitts as being, this transcendent play over the field, they want to play both together. There are reports now coming out. They're going to try and do a double tight end set.
Well, yeah, they're going to be running 12 all the time.
Yeah, because I don't really feel like there's a comfortable third receiving option for them to even put those guys on the field. So having those two big guys out there, and it's something I like currently talking about the New England Patriots. If with Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, this double tight end sort of maneuver, and if Pitts can even in the pre-snap motions even go to the outside, cool. You can do fun things with them. I like having fun with my offensive players. I like fantasy points. I don't think he's going to get me enough for me to care. I guess against the tight end field as a whole, I understand that 700 yards is fine, but I can get 700 yards in like round 12 possibly.
There it is. So I'll actually challenge you and everybody else to go ahead and take a look at what the Titans did with Arthur Smith as a tight ends coach in I believe it was 2018 when they had Delaney Walker and Jonnu Smith. Go ahead and put Hayden Hurst in the Delaney Walker role and put Kyle Pitts in the Jonnu Smith role. Both were viable options in different weeks. Neither one was completely blowing the world away. Now, Kyle Pitts is a lot different than those guys. I love the physicality. I love what he brings to the table in terms of size, speed, athleticism, all that. There's still a lot to learn in terms of NFL passing concepts, understanding where he's supposed to be on the field with that athleticism, understanding how to diagnose the coverage concepts he's going to be facing that he didn't see at Florida. There's going to be a lot to learn. Getting him in the right place is going to be the most vital part. But if you're telling me he's going to finish the season as a tight end 3, 4, 5, I'm not taking him in the top 50. That's not viable. That's not a good way to win your championship. So I'm with you. I'm going to go ahead, and as Hawkinson keeps sliding, I'll take that guy because he's locked and loaded for 120 targets because there's no one else catching passes there. So moving on, let's hit the next one here. Baltimore Ravens. J.K. Dobbins was just hurt. It looked like a really bad hyperextension of the knee. There's mixed reports coming out this morning that it is, in fact, a torn ACL. We do not have confirmation of that, but the assumption is right now that he is going to be done for 2021. Boy, oh boy, Gus Bus, Justice Hill. Is it going to be Todd Gurley getting signed? What does this team look like now?
So here's the problem. So yeah, if he goes on IR in the preseason, if you don't have your 53 set, it has to go to you're dead. You're out. You're done for the season. So we're not even looking at him. He's done for this year. That stinks. Which look at that. That stinks. But Edwards, here's the issue I have with, because a lot of people say that you can move him right into the slot that you had J.K. Dobbins. In my ranks, I was around running back 2021 or so. Mm-hmm. They said just slot Edwards in. He's now going to have all the work that Dobbins had plus his own. The issue I have with that is if you're already looking at the offensive system that is liking having multiple players fill that role, you already had last season around 30 red zone touches from Lamar Jackson, around like 28 for Dobbins and 26 for Edwards. Okay, so now why does Dobbins now get 50 red zone touches? They're going to still use that same system. Justice Hill is probably the next man up. There's another player on the depth chart that's escaping me. That's a little bit further down. I believe his last name was
Williams. I can't remember the first name, but last name was Williams. He was like
Tyson Williams.
Yes, preseason darling.
So if he's out again, he's probably going to be mostly out there. If you're already drafted and you have a last spot, Justice Hill priority first, Williams, because let's just see exactly how this all plays out. Because Justice Hill we thought was going to be something about 2-3 seasons ago, whatever that was. But if you just look at what Roman was using, you already have the most heavily used rushing quarterback in the league, which takes up such a big amount of what they're doing, regardless of the running backs at all. And J.K. Dobbins was good. But the problem was J.K. Dobbins was very good on very long runs. And the other carries he had for the rest of the season was just around above league average, around 4.4 yards per carry. But he had like 7 carries for the season, ate up like a ton of his yards, like around like 30% or so. So that's a big issue I have with how good is Dobbins actually and how much work was Edwards going to have stepping into this. So Justice Hill and Tyson Williams, I think, are going to mix in. I don't know how good Edwards is going to be in the receiving game otherwise. I think this is just going to be a very – and again, I am an Edwards guy, and now I have to talk bad about him because I was very happy most through the preseason. Now it comes down to the day for Edwards to drive the bus, Gus Bus, inbound. The Problem is that I think he's just a yes. Thank you. Your kids will appreciate that noise. He's probably going to come in for me past running back 25. We're talking about 26, 27, 30 or so. Ronald Jones, I would really like to draft over Gus Edwards. It's just a matter of how much involvement is Leonard Fournette from that second half of the season going to eat into how good Ronald Jones was in the
first. I'll tell you what, let's not talk about other teams. Let's focus on the Ravens.
It's just, it's rankings. It's really come down to who you're going to be taking him over. I'm seeing some people say that round 3, 4, 5 is going to be a set. So let's talk about, in that range.
Well, so I think that we need to consider the idea they're going to bring in a veteran running back. So where you're ranking him is, if you're taking him in rounds 3, 4, and 5, you're doing it wrong. Gus Edwards is not going to usurp all of that work. Gus Edwards' role will change slightly. It'll tick up. Like, it will absolutely tick up. Justice Hill might tick up a shade, and Gus will tick up a shade. And then they're going to bring in a third running back, and they're going to wait until after cuts. Because if a guy like Lat Murray gets cut in New Orleans, he'll end up in Baltimore.
Which I think is a great fit. I think that's a great fit for what they want to do. They're not asking him to do a lot, just run forward.
Exactly. And it's going to be Mark Ingram to Baltimore all over again, similar system, similar skill type. And this is a guy that's, 30, 31 years old, and the Saints, they could use the cap relief. I don't think it's a great idea to cut him. I think they really need all the running backs they can get their hands on too. But Tony Jones looked great in camp for them. So, hey, Lat Murray to Baltimore, maybe. Todd Gurley's been rumored there. Maybe it's Lev Bell. Like, there's a bunch of these dudes that are just hanging out on the couch right now that could end up there. So I think that the hype, much like what we saw with Sony Michel after that trade, Darrell Henderson after the Akers injury, a lot of these guys get hurt. Next thing you know, some backup is getting vaulted up the rankings, and everyone needs to kind of pump the brakes because it's lazy analysis to say, well, this guy's hurt. This guy gets all of his work.
Yeah, and I think that changes in the midseason. So I see a lot of people compared with like running backs to receivers. Who'd you rather have, sort of deal. It's like in the back, you make a trade. The value of running backs comes in midseason when we find out, are they good or not? Because there's so many running backs that just what we thought in the preseason doesn't come to fruition. And the other part being that a lot of guys get hurt. So now the pool starts shrinking. Right now we have the largest player pool available to us. So we have to look at their values in a different sense. If you're saying he's a top, a first 3 rounds or 4 rounds sort of guy, currently there's only 20 running backs ADP wise going in the first 4 rounds. New addition there being James Robinson at running back 20. So you're now saying, is he better than Robinson? Is he better than Sanders, who's going in that range? Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift, because those are the guys around 3 and 4 we're looking at. If you want to start looking around 5, you didn't go running backs and you want to start picking some guys up. Edwards is fine, but I think fine is just going to be when he doesn't score a touchdown, it feels like very much, 8 to 12 fantasy points is going to be really his range. And I don't know how valuable it is to really go out and reach for instead of just falling at 2. If he falls in your lap in round 5, round 6, that's a different story than you actively going out and saying, I want to go and pick up Gus Edwards. And again, I am a Gus Edwards guy, but that is not really what I'm looking for with this sort of player.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, let's get off Baltimore because we spent a bunch of time there.
Neededly, but yeah.
Let's go to Buffalo. So Buffalo Bills, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, neither one of them had a carry in week 3. Are they full on avoids? Like, what are we doing with this backfield?
Yeah, and I saw it was actually like, I believe Moss got 2. It was like in the first 2 quarters. That was really just their playing time. So it wasn't completely no touches. But the problem is that the best running back they have in Buffalo is Josh Allen. 8 rushing touchdowns each of the last 3 seasons. That is the biggest hit to these 2 players. And it just feels like we go into the argument all the time of which is the better player to actually have. But to me, it's more a sense of what is really the real desire to go and draft these guys just because they are a starting running back. I think there are better picks just anywhere else besides these 2 players. Do you have a preference? Are you actually actively drafting either of them?
Actively, no. Passively, if they fall late enough to me, I'll look at Moss because I think Buffalo will be pretty good. They're going to be a decent team, and if they're good enough this year, say they win 12, 13, 14 games, on a 17-game schedule, they're going to hammer the ball late with Moss. And I'm fine with that because Singletary, he's going to catch passes and this, that, or whatever. Give me Moss just because I think he's going to get some garbage time touches, but that's really the extent of it. I don't really love the Buffalo run game the way some other folks do. But that's the gist of that, and I don't think they're exciting enough to keep talking about. So let's move on to Carolina. So Carolina Panthers, how legit is Terrace Marshall? Preseason darling, flash in the pan, or does this guy have some staying power in the regular season?
It feels like flashes was Curtis Samuel 2-3 seasons ago where he was the most talked about receiver in the preseason. Mm-hmm. We just saw, I believe, Robbie Anderson just got an extension around $30 million. And a lot of people are saying, oh, this is going to really eat into Robbie Anderson's sort of playing time. Well, if they go and pay him $30 million, like they think that Robbie Anderson's going to go out and do so. And here's my big problem where they think that all three of these receivers are going to be viable, because we saw that happen in 2020. But the reason that happened is because Christian McCaffrey did not exist for most of the season. And that is such a big, big topic. I understand they play different positions, but you still have just an entire pool of targets going to your players, and Christian McCaffrey eats up a lot of playing time and a lot of work. So I don't think Marshall, for redraft purposes, I'm really getting this excited about. And again, I might be because I like Robbie Anderson quite a bit in the system. If he's going to be the possession guy and more continues to be the deep threat and larger play sort of guy, which ended up being, it kind of flipped roles for we thought prior to 2020, but that's actually ended up being. But Terrace Marshall, again, you're more of a dynasty guy than I am, so it's a little bit different story there. And I think the dynasty people are just really talking up heavily, but for us redraft people, we're like, hey, cool. But that's really it to me. He's cool, but I'm not really getting any sort of super excitement from him.
Well, in the preseason, it looked a lot like DJ Moore, especially in this last game, was actually getting more of that underneath work, 6 targets, 6 catches. And they were all in that short area where Robbie Anderson spent so much time working last season. I wonder if we're going to see Robbie Anderson as going back to the deep threat the way Darnold and he played in New York with DJ Moore over the middle. And if that's the case, teams are going to try to bracket up more and try and take him away over the middle. And then you're going to need safety help over the top with Robbie Anderson, which could leave Terrace Marshall pushing for that third wideout spot. And yeah, McCaffrey's going to see a lot of looks, but there could be enough targets to make him interesting. Like as a wide receiver 4, he could even have some spike weeks where in DFS he's really viable. I'm not afraid of him week 1 against a bad Jets secondary as a full-on super cheap play. But am I going out of my way to draft him in redraft? Nah, I'm going to let him sit on the wire and wait for him to do something. But let's go up to the Windy City, Chicago Bears. Andy Dalton is still locked in to start, but for how long?
So I actually went and looked at every single starting quarterback in their first season who played at least 15 or more games and starts from 2000 to 2020. That was 22 players. Got all the way from Kyle Orton and Mark Sanchez all the way up to Andrew Luck and Herbert and Cam Newton, right? So looking at like average yards, average touchdowns, what would Fields even be if he takes over? Because everyone's screaming to have Fields run out there, even in week 1 against, I don't understand Aaron Donald, but I believe they play Cleveland in week 3, and that's a very good defense as well. If Aaron Donald might mangle up your quarterback, Myles Garrett has just the same opportunity to do so. So around in terms of like yardage, the average rookie quarterback in their first season for this time frame is about like 3,200, 3,400 yards. We have some outliers like 800 yards for Kyle Orton, 4,300 yards for Andrew Luck. In terms of touchdowns, yeah, like 18 to 20. We're not really seeing any guys sort of light it up. And interceptions, all but 2 guys had double-digit interceptions. That was just Robert Griffin and Dak Prescott. Otherwise, you're looking at pretty not great play from the last 20 years. And a lot of these guys are not, I understand there's Deshaun Kaiser on here. But you have, we got a phone in.
Sorry, that was an alarm. I don't know why I have a 1:45 Eastern alarm set.
You got to wake up, man. But you have some quality quarterbacks in here. Got Jameis Winston his rookie year when he was one of the high, first or second pick, whichever he ended up being besides Mariota. Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, Prescott. There's great quarterbacks on this list. So we just saw just very average QB play. And a lot of these guys took a lot of hits as well. David Carr in his rookie season was sacked 76 times back. I believe that was the first year for the Houston Texans. I just want to say that was that's a crazy number.
He set a record for most times being sacked his rookie year, and then the most sacks ever taken in the first 3 years of a career. And I think in his first 5 years, he had the most. Like his entire tenure in Houston was like a sack record. I mean, that poor guy was under fire. His career was over before it started because his brains were basically turned to oatmeal by every opposing defense.
Basically, all but 3 guys, which was Matt Ryan, Derek Carr, his brother, much less hits, 24 sacks for him, and Andy Dalton. We're under 25 sacks, so they're going to see pressure. You're seeing them kind of crumble under pressure. You're seeing high turnover numbers. You're not seeing very high touchdown numbers. I think just as, the real difference with Fields is, the rushing ability. So it's going to be a matter of how much is that to inflate his real, fantasy value. I think both things can be true. I think I prefer Justin Fields to start as soon as possible. And I also don't want to draft him for fantasy. I think those can both be fine.
Yeah.
And I think be right as well. I think that's just my take on it.
Well, I'll break this down really simply. He blew away Andy Dalton in every conceivable way. Now, Justin Fields, people keep trying to say he's like Lamar. He doesn't have the same kind of elusiveness in the open field Lamar Jackson has, but he's got plenty of straight line speed. If Fields plays 14 games, he's going to go for 3,600 yards, and he'll be 24-10. I have no trouble going with that. Cap on another 560 rushing with a touchdown there. He's just so quick. He makes good decisions. He gets rid of the football. He's really accurate. I think he's a really nice passer considering his age and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, that's still going to be QB 20. Like, this isn't a guy that, I'm not going out of my way to draft him. Yeah, in Superflex, I want him, or in 2 QB, I'll take him. But he should be starting. He should be starting week 1. I don't care if it's Aaron Donald, because I'd rather have Justin Fields running away from Aaron Donald than Andy Dalton running away from Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
And so there's that. But, that's really the gist of it. It is still going to be Dalton until further notice, but I'm expecting 14 games at a Field, so I don't think it'll be for long. Let's head over to Cincinnati. So Tyler Boyd, best value in the Bengals wide receiver room? Question mark?
Yeah, at least that's what I believe. That's what it says. Matt believes Boyd's the best wide receiver value. Bing bang right there, right? So here's my issue, right? And we might have talked about this on this podcast before, but my thing I bring up all the time with Cincinnati is that you have people saying they think Burrow's playing scared. They don't think the offensive line can protect him. But then you don't like Boyd and Mixon, who are right now, as to what they're historically been, be more of the underneath guys, or
the shortest A-dot guys.
Yes, and then you like guys like Chase and Higgins, who are around A-dots around like 13 yards or greater. So we don't have time for those plays to even develop. Why do we think that? It feels like, why are we saying A and B? But those are very polar things of what you're trying to say. So that's what I'm looking right now. Tyler Boyd, yes, he's the oldest and least sexy, I guess, of the 3 players.
Tyler Boyd isn't sexy. That's why people don't like him. It is Boyd. You're 100% right. He is the best value. It's not even particularly close.
I hate that.
Yeah, but it's that's why I kind of gave it a little. I churched it up a little bit, right? So at the end of the day, all three of these guys are going to see 100 targets. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. But it's going to be Boyd as the leader in the clubhouse. I am not embarrassed to say that I am badly overweight on Tyler Boyd. I think I have him in like 85 or 90% of my leagues. I'm getting him late everywhere because people are taking Chase and Higgins out ahead of him. Fine.
Like,
take those guys
right now.
Yeah, right. And then I'm going to take Boyd later because he'll be a target monster. I'm good with him giving me, say, 85 catches for barely 1,000 yards and 5 touchdowns. Because of where I'm getting him, that makes him easily a wide receiver 2, and I'm paying a wide receiver 3 or 4 price for him. So I'm with you. Boyd is the best value. It's a hands down, lockdown. Give it to me, and I love it. Yeah, lead pipe lock. Let's hit. I've got a buddy who's a Steelers fan, and he always tells me that Cleveland is the quote mistake by the lake. And but we're gonna go hit the Cleveland Browns now. Shout out to my boy Zach. OBJ fully healthy. Can he quote? And I'm quoting you because you wrote this in the notes. Turn back the clock. This guy's not 35 years old. What are we talking about? Turn back the clock here.
So I use that in the sense of, can he go back to his real heyday of his New York Giants sort of one hand catch? Everyone's getting crazy about him. His rookie season sort of just crazy yardage. Like, is he still that player? And there's a chance that we're very vastly underrating him going into the year, but it's more a sense of, I don't think we're underrating the player. It's just a matter of how much work can the player get. And they were very successful not having the player around. So that's really where I start getting into issues in that sort of regard. If he starts getting closer to, top 24 sort of rankings, in ADP and all that stuff, which he's pushing to, he's actually right behind the 2 of the Bengals we just talked about. Chase and Higgins are both going ahead of him. One of those could go ahead. I don't think both should go ahead, but Beckham, I really struggle with the idea because I looked at how Cleveland operated after he went down, and they were just very successful playing safe football. So we have the fantasy landscape and this real life football landscape now really arguing against each other and which way is going to be. There was 2 Jeff Matthews.
Sorry about that. My network blinked here. I think the fact that we have 7 devices streaming 4K video in this house, and I'm trying to do a video show, it's probably not great, even on a enterprise grade network.
So if you missed it, I'm going to punt to you in sense. I think Odell Beckham is a very good player. I think it's just a matter of he's no longer going to have the top 12 ceiling, but I think he's a very fine option. It's really my whole gist of it. How do you feel about all that?
I really like Odell this year. I'm a real big fan. I'm in on Beckham, and I think that he is still that player. There's still enough success rate when he's running routes to be considered a great route runner, right? The big thing is Cleveland really miscast him, and they've really been using him poorly. And as long as that's changing, I think we're going to be okay. The fact that they kept taking him deep on these like 9 routes and these deep post routes, they're trying to get him deep and basically just dragging safeties back to open up the middle of the field, which that's not how you use Odell Beckham. You got to get this guy the rock. The reason why he was so great with the Giants is Eli Manning would hit him with a 5-yard slant route, and Odell would make plays and take it to the house. And then he'd do that so frequently that he could beat you with a double move and take you deep, like the one-handed catch play or some of these other plays where he's just, looks like a superstar. He's not old to the point where we need to worry about him falling off yet. He's had some injuries, but they're mostly kind of fluky. I think he'll be okay. I'm willing to draft him at ADP and take him where he is and use him as a wide receiver 3, and I'm fine with it. I actually have him in a couple spots as a wide receiver 4.
Yeah, and that's now that we're thinking of him as such, I think it's a completely different story, and I'm fine wrapping up Odell on that one.
Cool. Dallas Cowboys, home of the Hard Knocks. So
good show.
I've only seen a half of one episode. Every time I turn it on, my wife comes in and wants to watch something else, and then I have to watch whatever weirdness she wants to watch.
So we're good.
What are we thinking about the second most highly drafted team outside of the Chiefs? When we think about highly drafted, I mean, we've got Zeke and Dak and Lamb and Cooper and Gallup, and there's just so many weapons here. What are we thinking about this team? Are they going to be record-setting offense?
They are my most favorite team to draft. That is bar none, because I don't have to pay exactly outside of Zeke, the real high prices, because Mahomes is currently being locked in really as the QB1, and you have Kelsey as the tight end 1, and Hill's round wide receiver 1. But you have a team that, man, I understand we don't like doing funny math, so we did that talking about the Dallas a few episodes ago, where it's like, yeah, you could have thrown 800 attempts and have 7,000 touchdowns. And it's like, yeah. Now, when I look at Prescott, who is still my QB2, and looking at injury reports, everything has been kind of overblown. They're very happy to see what they're going to get out of him in week 1. When you look at this offense, it looks like a mismatch nightmare no matter which way they throw it at you. It's really talented players all over the field. I understand the offensive line is not good as it once was, and Zeke's not, maybe in his healthiest spot, because he's a few years removed from that rookie season where he's just taken so much work and so much hits. We're, a few years down the line, but I look at such a talented and really like almost underrated team, because Prescott's not going as the QB2. You don't have Cooper and Lamb. I mean, Lamb's kind of pushing top 12 now, but not really, locked in there. I think they're just amazing values. There's 3 teams I really want to draft this year and for fantasy, and it's San Francisco, Dallas, and the LA Chargers. And if I can have multiple players from this team and just stack up Dallas, I love Dallas. I am so over the moon on them. This is my favorite team for fantasy. If they're going to have the amount of plays that they ran last year, around 4 games of 80 plays back when Prescott was under center, that's what I want to see again. Jeff, okay. Tell me good things about the Cowboys, because I will not accept bad things. I'm not even a Cowboys fan, so that's one team off the list.
Well, I just watched in my home league draft. Now it's a keeper league, right? So we keep generally 2 to 3 on offense. We also have IDPs, so it kind of complicates matters. But CeeDee Lamb went with the 12th pick in the draft
overall.
And so imagine that's effectively being like the 30th pick in the draft if you were doing a full startup.
Gotcha.
So these guys are going pretty early. The Cowboys offense could be record setting, and I'm on board with that idea. I think that you're pretty happy drafting any of these guys. I'm pretty loaded up on Gallup just because, I wasn't ready to pay the premium for any of the other players. When I was watching CeeDee Lamb go 10, 12, 15 picks ahead of ADP recently, and that kind of wigs me out a little bit. So I stayed away. Still got Gallup, still happy to get a piece of it. I mean, heck, when I've had the opportunity to, go grab Dak, because if you think all 3 wideouts are going to be great, the quarterback's got to be really great. So love Dallas. Not a big fan of the Cowboys particularly, but for fantasy, they're going to be incredible this year. Let's move on to the Rocky Mountains, Denver Broncos. Bridgewater's locked in to start. For how long is it good for the team? Before you say anything, I'm going to let you know that the fact they went with Bridgewater and not the guy they drafted in Drew Lock is telling enough that it's Bridgewater's team, and he's going to have to get hurt to lose this job.
I hope you're right, because I would really prefer that to the other option, which is where they start him 6 or 7 games and then they switch to Locke and they switch back to Bridgewater and then the season's lost.
If they do that, they'll only win 4 games this year and they'll be picking in the top 5, and Spencer Rattler will be a Denver Bronco next year.
That's my fear when I start talking about Bridgewater. There's also something there was a play last night where, yes, Cortland Sutton looks good. Cortland Sutton doesn't look hurt. He looks back. But one thing I did not like on that touchdown play, I think it was in the second quarter, he stared down Sutton the entire play. They're like on like the 8-yard line, right? So he gets pressure up the middle. They push him out of the pocket, and he just looks completely at Sutton. If it's a preseason game, it scores. If that's a regular season game, I don't like that. There's still things in Bridgewater's game I do not like. I think it's a safe pick for them to help them win football games, even if it doesn't look good for fantasy.
Yep, this coaching staff's coaching for their jobs right now, and Bridgewater gives them a better chance to maybe not win, but at least to not lose than Drew Lock. So let's move on to the Motor City here. Detroit Rock City. Dan Campbell, not 100% on Swift's availability for week 1. Here's the thing. Guy's on a pitch count. I don't think it's going to matter. You're still drafting this guy in the 3rd round or so, second, 3rd round. You got to take him. He's still going to be great for the bulk of the season. I expect him to be on a pitch count for the first 2 to 3 weeks with a 17-game schedule. What say you?
I have absolutely no problem with this. If I can have DeAndre Swift past week 1, then I don't care about week 1. I'm a little bit different. That same thing with like Saquon Barkley. If they're literally not playing any other games besides week 1, then this is an issue. But otherwise, I'm A-okay with it. And Jeff has a dog barking.
Yeah, I'm trying to yell at my dog. and yell at the dog. He sees something. There's a squirrel or a cat or something in the yard. But anyway, with that, cool. Let's go ahead and bounce on to Green Bay. Are there 2 first-round picks on this team?
Yes.
Should we be looking at Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones?
Yes. Next question. Draft both in the first round.
I love the rapid fire. I'm all about the rapid fire. Houston, which running back do you draft first? Is Watson being traded? The answer is none and no.
Yeah, if you have to have me take one, I prefer Johnson. If he's going to get out of more of the actual carry role and just receiving, that's the thing I care about. They're going to be playing from behind a lot. And Watson, I think Houston's trying to find a team dumb enough to take that exorbitant price they're asking. 3 first-round picks in 2 seconds is a lot. I understand Watson, but these outfield allegations, I don't think are going to go away anytime soon. That is a crazy price.
There's a real chance of criminal charges here. All this trade news is probably being leaked by Watson's camp anyway. Stay away from Houston running backs. Stay away from the Houston offense completely. Watson isn't being traded. He's going to end up on the exempt list. Indy, Quentin Nelson, Carson Wentz on track for week 1. Maybe not 100% week 1. Do we still like Indianapolis, or are we fading this team against Seattle week 1?
They, I believe, just lost a player.
Sam Teddy went down with an ACL.
Yeah, I don't think was he starting for them? I don't believe so.
He was the starter because they had the other left tackle was down with an Achilles. So Tevy was going to play. Now Tevy is out. Now it looks like Julian Davenport. Not great stuff at left tackle right now for Indianapolis. Yeah, it's terrible. I'm fading Indy against Seattle. I still love Jonathan Taylor because I think he's a premium talent. But the rest of the offense,
Hilton out for like a month possibly or more. I don't know.
Fade the rest of the offense. Get yourself Taylor, and everybody else, forget it. You don't need them. Jacksonville. ETN done for the year. Liz Frank really hates football players, and she saw to ending his season. So we've got James Robinson. He was the PPR RB4 last year, and we got Gardner Minshew shipped off to Philly. Like, this is a team that's got some movement happening right now. They also traded Joe Schobert, a linebacker, up to Pittsburgh. Like, what is happening? Yeah, it is defense, but still, like, they're making a lot of moves. This is a team in flux right at the end of the preseason. Like, what's happening here?
The one thing I will say with Robinson, I think people underestimate how much receiving work he got last year. He's a good, possibly great runner, but if him having around 50 receptions really matters. I still don't think he's a top 12 guy because I saw people really saying like, all right, he finished like this, so he's going to be that again. Running back finishes are a trap. Don't take that as law. I do think he's in for a very good season again. I am very worried about this Jacksonville team being very bad. In the preseason, I was saying I think the worst team in football might be Detroit or Houston. It might be Jacksonville again. I really think this team is bad.
I think Trevor Lawrence wills them into being at least out of the bottom 3, but Urban Meyer is going to try and see to it that they're the worst team in football because he's not a very good football coach from what I can tell. Kansas City, CEH has a hurt foot. Doesn't sound like it's anything serious. And now if it's a foot or an ankle, it seems like the details out of Kansas City have been a little murky. doesn't seem serious. Should be ready to go week 1. I don't think we have anything to really add to that. But what about Nicole Hardman? Like this receiving core, you don't have Sammy Watkins anymore. You have Pat Mahomes. But I mean, what happens in those weeks when Kelsey, who's, over 30 now, maybe doesn't have the best week or gets, shut down. And then you've also got Tyreek Hill. What's after that? Who's the next guy?
We currently haven't seen the next guy even, really come to fruition because they've rotated in multiple guys in the past. You've seen Byron Pringle.
Demarcus Robinson.
I don't care about any of them, to be honest. Clyde Lair, the problem with him is that his backup, Darrell Williams, I believe, got a concussion. And last week when Hilaire went down with the ankle or whatever, he seems fine. I was trying to see if I should move around my rankings. It's not really anything. You still take him. I still think he's a player worth being the first running back on your team, wherever he may land. But otherwise than that, I'm not particularly looking for any other receiver outside of Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, because the number one receiver on this team is Kelce, even at 31. But again, I'm the guy that says he's too old, and everyone's like, hey, it's great. I still think I don't want to say he's a bad first round pick, but that's why I asked, if he doesn't score 300 fantasy points like he did, if he scores close to his average of 250, is he a bad first round pick? And apparently I'm the only guy who thinks he might be. So I'm just going to say, if he's a bad first round pick, I said it.
I want Devontae Adams over Travis Kelce unless it's tight end premium. And the only reason there is I really think Aaron Rodgers is going scorched earth on the NFL this year, more so than last year. So that could get wild for Packer fans. Let's move on. Las Vegas. So Darren Waller back in practice. Favorite wide receiver of the bunch? I think so.
Well, I meant that as like, who is the favorite wide receiver? Because it is Darren Waller. It was
no, he is the favorite. Like there's that. It's him, and then Bryan Edwards could break out, but what else is left there? Third and Renfro?
Yeah, it's a lot of, it's just a lot of guys. They're a football team. That is it. There's a lot of guys that are going to mix in. My favorite is Edwards just because of his size, and if it's going to be traditional what Las Vegas does, which is a lot of under 10 yards pass attempts. Edwards, at least you can't teach how guys to grow. So if you could do that, that's some wizard stuff that we haven't seen. But Edwards is my favorite of the group right now. I'm not particularly looking for any of them though.
This dog's a dummy. I'm sorry. He's a complete idiot. I love him. He's just a moron sometimes. So LA Chargers, Austin Eckler says you should draft him with the 101. What are your expectations? I think 101's a little high, but he's probably not far off.
He can't be out the next two guys, and Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook, but I think after 4 and onward, if you can start taking your guys, right? After 104 and onward, I think is when the draft really starts. So I think for full PPR purposes, it's McCaffrey, and then pick your favorite of Cook or Kamara, and then the other guy, and then we're looking at Eckler, Elliott, Barkley, Taylor, whatever, all that. So all those guys. I think Austin Eckler can, in this new Lombardi offense that Joe Lombardi come from the New Orleans Saints, can run. I think it's going to be working with guys that he's been working on in the Saints. Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas seem a lot like Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler. I really, really like what we can see out of Eckler this season.
Hey, we actually have a handful of questions popping in here. Hey, Julia, how you doing? Thrilled to have you. NBA Rigged. We're going to hit some of those questions at the very end. We're going to finish rapid firing some of the team stuff here, and then we'll bounce around to those questions. So stick around for a little bit. Let's go ahead and hit the next one. I love Eckler as my RB3. I like him more than some of those other guys, but that's not here nor there. Rams, Sony Michel added to the backfield. Does this change Henderson? Does this make him better, make him worse? What are we thinking?
No, I was even, and the same thing for New England. It didn't change anything for Damien Harris for me because I wasn't really baking Michel. And for Darrell Henderson, they needed someone else to take touches. With Calais and Funk and all the funky bunch, really, someone else was going to have work. They put Henderson on ice for this preseason because they needed to just save him because they literally didn't know what they were going to have in this backfield. Sony Michel is going to have a lot of invaluable touches, and that's really just like the short and long of it.
Rams have a pattern. It's going to be Henderson early, Michel late. Mark my words, he's worthless the first 6 to 7 weeks, but we're going to see him in the second half, and he'll suddenly be viable. Miami Dolphins. Deshaun Watson linked to Miami, 3 firsts, 2 seconds. That's been debunked. Miami apparently balked at this price already. That's coming out of multiple sources out of Miami. So it sounds like Watson's camp is one trying to drum up the trade interest like we already talked about with Houston. But what do we think of Tua?
I like to see what Tua can do because Dwayne Haskins has started more NFL games than Tua has. Another year removed from a hip injury that one time I believe was the Bo Jackson injury that ended his career.
Similar, but wasn't quite as bad. He didn't have the same, I believe it was like necrosis or whatever they referred to around the joint.
That sounds like a bad thing to happen. That sounds like death, right?
It's actually a death of the tissue around the joint, apparently. So
Tua, I like to see what he looks like. You have a guy, Will Fuller adds to it. We have the very overrated Devontae Parker, or underrated. It really depends on who you ask. And adding Waddle. I like to see what this passing offense can do. Mike Gesicki was not very liked by Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was liked by Tua Tagovailoa. So let's see how that really goes. I think I nailed his name too.
You did. You got it. I like it.
Yeah. And with Myles Gaskin, who I think I know people were scared about the committee. I like this Dolphins offense. I think Tua, we're talking about all these rookie quarterbacks late. Tua might actually be the guy who pops up out of nowhere. We're trying to find the Justin Herbert. It might be Tua this year.
Teams were tanking for Tua 2 years ago. Okay. Waddle's the guy to get right now as the wide receivers. I do like Gesicki late. A lot of these guys are going to be late darlings, and they're all going to be super viable. Gotta love Miami's offense. They're not getting Deshaun Watson. Put those fires out.
Also, Fuller suspended week 1, just so everyone kind of might have forgotten.
Yeah, that's why Waddle's going to be great week 1. I'm actually playing on a bunch of DFS lineups. Minnesota. Let's see. So we've got we've got Cook or Kamara, given you have Winston playing for the Saints now, like which one's better? Cook, Kamara. How are you feeling now that Winston's the quarterback in New Orleans?
I go Kamara. I've been going Kamara, and I think you go Kamara as well because you think that Dalvin Cook is is made out of tissue paper. So I like. Yeah,
he's made out of basically balsa wood and wet tissue paper, but that's not entirely true. I mean, he plays really tough, gets a bunch of touches, and he has points where he breaks down, and that's why he misses 2 or 3 games a year.
Listen, that's fine by me because I think Kamara, is going to be in full PPR, which again, what I look at, I think he's very, very made for that sort of scoring system. Dalvin Cook is a great runner. He can catch passes. He does a lot of what Minnesota wants him to do. It's just a matter of Kamara does it just a little bit better for the scoring system.
Well, we'll talk more about Winston in just a minute. Let's hit New England. Cam Newton, starting job lost. I mean, is this going to be Mac Jones's team now? And is that the right call?
I'll tell you, a lot of the rookie quarterbacks have surprised me this offseason, and one of them being Mac Jones, because I was like, man, I don't like this pick. And we were talking about it because I said I really didn't like him. You said you did like him going to England. I was like, ooh, I don't like this pick at all. And now I'm like, okay, all the rookie quarterbacks look a lot more composed in the preseason than I ever expected. So I very much think that Newton is possibly not going to fit into their plans for 2021.
I fully agree. I don't know that he fits into their plans, beyond week 1 or 2. Mac Jones will be the starter sooner rather than later. This actually helps the tight ends, and it might hurt Jacoby Myers, something to keep in mind there. We already talked a little bit about New Orleans while we were talking Minnesota with the Cook Kamara kind of comp there. But New Orleans, Winston's got the starting job. Rapid reaction. What do you think? How does this help or hurt the offense outside of Kamara?
It's the right call. You saw those plays with those passes down to Marcus Callaway, contested catches. Those sort of throws do not exist with Taysom Hill. I understand that Taysom Hill is the love child of Sean Payton, and he gets in playing time for whatever reason. And he'll still pop in. Around the goal line and do annoying stuff, and everyone's going to hate him. And so we're back to normal Taysom Hill, where he's just pissing everyone off, which is great. But for the team, the better quarterback in terms of what they can actually do and get the most out of the players. So I think this is a team that still is going to be desperate in terms of overall production needed. Jameis Winston's the right call. He actually might end up being the disaster, but he might end up being their next franchise quarterback if this all works out. He was supposed to be for Tampa Bay, so let's see if he does it for New Orleans.
Well, just remember, when Drew Brees moved to New Orleans and he took on that job, they got hit with Hurricane Katrina, and now Hurricane Ida is here while Winston's taking over. This could be a bad omen for New Orleans, but a good omen for the Saints. I don't know, man. I don't know how to measure that.
If you're in the pathway of the hurricane as well, please stay safe.
Yeah, please stay safe. I hope you've already evacuated. It's apparently a Category 5 storm. It's a pretty nasty situation apparently down there right now. We know one of our friends of the site, Elvin Ryan, lives down that way, and he's evacuated about 300 miles eastbound. But the whole thing is really scary. But the coincidence couldn't be overlooked for the Drew Brees thing. So I do like Winston as a starter. I think Marcus Callaway is going to be a great player this year. I don't know that I like him in individual one-on-one matchups against great corners. I don't love him week 1 against Jair Alexander. But this is going to be an offense to watch week to week. So New York Giants, Saquon Barkley taking team drills, could play week 1. Is he a full go?
Doesn't sound like it. And I think that's kind of just your real appetite for risk is going to have to be played in with a guy like Barkley. We understand what Barkley could be when he's fully ready, rocking and rolling. I do see it was like I believe it was Dr. Chow was his last name. He's a very well-known fantasy, PT, medical PT. He nails his calls with injuries, and his first thing out of his mouth is, "Yeah, he's going to play week 1. He's not going to be 100%." And I think it's something that's going to be bothering for at least the first month. So that's something to really talk about with him.
I expect him to be pitch counted a little bit because they're going to end up trying to re-sign him, and they don't need to blow him out this year so early into his career. Expect to get a steady dose of Devonta Booker. So New York Jets, we got Zach Wilson and company, seem further along than people thought. We got an interesting passing game here with Corey Davis. Maybe we get some Crowder, maybe we get some Elijah Moore. There's a bunch of different guys that are all going to be kind of middling receivers that could be useful. And then at running back, Ty Johnson, Michael Carter, Tevin Coleman. Like, what's going on in this offense? Who should we be investing in?
I think Michael Carter is being one of the more overdrafted running backs. This is one of the preseason things where I think we actually have to look at and adjust rankings and move him down. He's not currently looked like going to be mixing into that backfield for the New York Jets earlier than expected, which is not really crazy because that all rookie backfield between Zach Wilson and Michael Carter is probably something not the coaching staff really wants to take that risk on, because they're really trying to do a very safe 2021. Carter's a running back of the future. You have Moore as a wide receiver of the future, and Wilson. That seems like a good core in 2022, 2021. I think Michael Carter right now should not be drafted in like the running back 30s. I think he needs to start being dropped into the 40s and later.
I can dig it. Philadelphia Eagles, Gardner Minshew now on the roster. Apparently, Twitter thinks this hurts. Does it?
With the ellipses, yeah, no, I don't think so at all. They got him for a 6th-round pick, and a year like this with COVID and with injuries and not knowing exactly what Hurts is going to really be for them. If you get Minshew, who is a very good backup quarterback, and that's really kind of what he is. He's a backup quarterback for what was a conditional 6th-round pick. Mm-hmm. Cool. It's like they got him for free, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's a good football move, but I think bringing in a guy with a lot of starting experience, and they still had Flacco on the roster, they're either going to carry 3 quarterbacks and try and push Hurts. If he struggles, Minshew suddenly becomes the guy. That's a really interesting situation to keep an eye on in Philly. I am still willing to buy Devonta Smith, but the rest of that offense seems a little scary to me. Pittsburgh, let's go up to the Steel City. So is Big Ben undervalued, or the wide receivers overvalued, or is it both?
I think... Bless you. I think Ben is undervalued, but you think the wide receivers are overvalued.
Yes. And I'll tell you why. So here's the thing. I'm just watching Ben, right? There's noticeable velocity missing from his passes. The fastball isn't there. The depth on his throws isn't there. And, one of the worst things I managed to see all offseason was somebody said, man, he still got the cannon. Ben had to on the
underthrow,
throw hop and fire one, and it went like 33 yards in the air, and it looked like he was playing 500 with his friends when they were in like elementary school. Like it looked terrible. And so all I can really hope for right now is that Ben can be 75% of what he's always been, but that arm looks shot. I think he's done. He's dusted. It's going to mean bad things for that wide receiver group. The best guy there is probably going to be a low-end wide receiver 2. You're probably going to have a low-end wide receiver 3, and maybe I don't think Chase Claypool really factors into this. I think he's going to be one of those DFS darlings, but it's going to be Johnson. It's going to be Juju, Najee Harris. Pat Freiermuth, the rookie tight end. He might be nice, but yeah, and he'll be fine long term, but they need to do something at quarterback because it isn't going to be Haskins from what I can tell in the preseason. It's certainly not Mason Rudolph. Pittsburgh's a mess. San Francisco. So both QBs struggle in week 2. Is Lance going to play at all? Here's the thing. I'm a Niners fan. I watch all these snaps. I'm just going to kind of take the lead on this one.
Go ahead.
Lance isn't ready, period.
Okay.
Like, people want Lance to play early. He shouldn't. Jimmy Garoppolo looks polished. He's got great command of the offense. And, it's a matter of right now, like, I want the guy that's going to help the team win because they're close to being Super Bowl ready. And, this is the team 2 years ago that was there, and we were, a 3rd and 18 completion to Tyreek Hill away from being Super Bowl champions. It's not going to be Lance. He might get some snaps. He'll have some packages. He might even get a start or 2 at the end of the year, depending on how things are going. But expect a steady dose of Jimmy Garoppolo. Let Lance learn the way Mahomes did. Boom. He'll be fine, but not this year. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I like Jimmy G a lot, actually. I think he's another quarterback who's being massively undervalued.
Well, and he's got great hair. It's hard to not.
He's a handsome man, and that doesn't count. That doesn't give me fantasy points. I just like him throwing the ball to the guys we want.
He's a very pretty man. Seattle Seahawks. Is Rashad Penny going to make this team? I mean, this guy, like a few years ago in dynasty drafts and rookie drafts, he was like a top 3 pick, and this has been a massive fall from grace.
Yeah, and that's really the big question is, the real thing with Carson is at every turning point, people thought, okay, Penny's going to step in, and then he gets hurt. And Penny's going to step in, and then he's going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. So now Alex Collins, Travis Homer, I think DJ Dallas might even still be on the team, might not be, But Rashad Penny right now, it's talked about, Seattle's possibly ready just to move on from him, and that doesn't really affect us for redraft, but there's not really a lot of things going on with Seattle, so I had to pick something, and that's really the only news of them right now is Penny might not make the team. And if that does, I think that's more confidence possibly that Chris Carson, for as long as it may be, is the guy for Seattle and should be thought of as such.
Yeah, and I like Chris Carson a lot. His injuries have been kind of fluky. I always say fluky injuries versus like real injuries because like a broken leg is a fluky injury, right? That's not a recurring injury. It's not like the guy pulls his hamstring every 3 weeks. So I think Carson's the guy. They could live without Rashad Penny. It's just going to depend on how much of his contract is guaranteed right now. That'll probably be the defining factor of whether or not he's on this roster. Tampa Bay, defending Super Bowl champions of the world. What are we doing? So who's the running back to roster here? I kind of think all these running backs are terrible for fantasy. Not terrible. They're just not good.
Ronald Jones was really good to start 2020. That's the problem. And that's really the issue here, right? Because Ronald Jones was so good, like 800 yards before their week 13 bye. Then he gets hurt, and then playoff Lenny comes. And Leonard Fournette is very, very excellent through the playoffs. So now we have Leonard Fournette was very seldomly used in the first half. Ronald Jones was very seldomly used in the second half. And now you had Giovanni Bernard, whose whole thing is just catching passes, which is really something Leonard Fournette actually was one of the few stats that really outshined Ron Jones. How many targets he had, like 40 to 38, which is still like, again, in that prior to week 13 sort of time frame. I think Gio is getting a little bit overblown. I will say that people are really talking up that he's going to be like a really, really good points per game player. If he goes in there, I think it's because they don't really have a tight end that they should probably trust. And if Gio wants to just do tight end stuff and they just have him on the field alongside one of the running backs, that's fine. Because Gronk disappeared outside of the Super Bowl in one game down the stretch last year. Gronk, he's on a 1-year deal. He's very old and very hurt and very not good anymore.
So if they want made out of titanium now, like he's kind of a mess right now.
So if they want to have both RBs out there, cool. I'd still lean Ronald Jones. That's me. If you want to lean for Fournette, go ahead. I think both of them are, as you could say, yeah, they're not good, but I think Ronald Jones is getting really undervalued. Well, if Tampa Bay wants to do the right thing, which is play him.
Absolutely. I think, hey, Tampa Bay, the guy to own is obviously Brady, right? Until Father Time figures out where Tom Brady lives, like you can't bet against the guy. But that, of course, leads me to loving Godwin and Evans and Antonio Brown. With that much firepower in the passing game, they don't really need to run it. And I don't know if I trust any of those guys week to week, so skip them all. Tennessee, should Darrington Evans be one of the highest drafted handcuffs? Now, you know me, I like some handcuffs. And
does Mrs. DiMatteo agree with that sentiment?
Phrasing. I guess we're not doing phrasing anymore. That was not the way I meant for that. I like handcuffing my high end.
You didn't answer the question.
What my wife and I do in the privacy of our own.
I don't know what's red right now, your face or those jerseys behind you.
Are we not doing phrasing anymore? Anyway, Derrick Henry has had an insane workload the last several years. You can't predict an injury, but the human body can only withstand so many hits before it starts to break down a little bit. I'm not afraid of drafting Darrington Evans in the 16th round after I've taken Derrick Henry in the first. It's an insurance policy. Some folks simply say, well, don't draft your handcuffs, draft the handcuff for another team or another running back. Well, here's the thing. If your guy gets hurt and that guy doesn't get hurt, that handcuff isn't on the field. If you spend a first-round pick on Derrick Henry, you need that handcuff because he's suddenly an RB1. So, yes, get me Darrington Evans. I think he should be one of the highest-rated guys right up there with Tony Pollard and Alexander Madison.
Yeah, I think that argument, don't draft your handcuff, draft someone else's, I think is a little outdated just for 2021. We'll know more after this year, but this is and again, I'm not even saying it to like the injuries that have happened so far to running backs. These are very fluke things. You're like, what's going on? But we're going into season and, the punishment starts and, it feels like you got hit by a truck sort of situations go on. Bells are going to be rung. bones are going to be broken.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a different year. I'm totally fine with just backlogging a ton of running backs. And if they're useless, cool. Then no one got hurt. And it was a great year for football, and I love it. But if people do start getting hurt, you want to have insurance policies, taken out on yourself. Take insurance policies out on your fantasy teams, right? I just got health insurance again for a few years, and I love it. I would love to have the health insurance version of that with Darrington Heavens. Don't laugh. This is a great thing for me.
I'm calling it for like homeowners insurance. Whatever. Building my house around my running back right now. Cool. So we like Darrington Evans. All right. Washington. The Washington football team. Sounds like they're going to change their name by next year. So maybe the Washington Red Wolves, perhaps. I don't know. We'll see. Is Thomas the worst tight end value in the league, or is that like Dallas Goedert?
My real answer is probably both. But they're firmly in the tight end wasteland that currently is after TJ Hawkinson and before you hit Tunyon and Irv Smith, because Irv Smith is past pick 100. So Noah Fant, Logan Thomas, Dallas Goedert, and Robert Tunyon if he's going at pick 90. I think it's fine just because the FU tour that Rodgers is going to do, version 2. We're going back. It's Lollapalooza number 2 here. But those tight ends are in very much incorrect spots. Zach Ertz is apparently confirmed to be a Philadelphia Eagle this year. And Logan Thomas, we have seen he is not being targeted by Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick, on average, I think I went through his tight ends get around per year average is around 60 targets. I don't think, and that's with,
it's not enough.
It's really not. If we're going to be looking, at what did Thomas have last year? Over 100, 110. So we're cutting his targets in half.
Yeah, you don't have Alex Smith throwing it to him this year. You don't have Kyle Allen throwing it to him this year. Fitzpatrick's going to be just tunnel vision on Terry McLaurin, probably Curtis Samuel, and Antonio Gibson. It's going to be those 3. There's not enough passing work to go around. Forget Logan Thomas. He's being overdrafted, overhyped. If you're taking him at ADP, you might as well have just taken Irv Smith and get a better player.
Oh, I love Irv Smith.
I know, same here. So that is all of our teams. We managed to hit all 32 teams. It only took us like 56 minutes. We've got a handful of questions we're going to shoot through. So we've got some here. We're going to try and hit these in succession here. So I'm going to go back to the top here. Question number 1. When is Quentin Nelson and Eric Fisher back at Colts practice? Nelson's there. Fisher is not. It sounds like Fisher's been sitting. He's still got some rehab issues going on with the Achilles. Jags O-line is top 3 in salary, right? Why can't they perform? Why can they be cut if they're bad? Well, I don't know. Are they top 3 in salary? I'd have to look that one up.
I don't have those. I don't have that figures. So,
gotcha. So the Jags O-line is very good in terms of run blocking grade last year in PFF. I don't know what their salaries are offhand. I do love that group blocking for James Robinson. My concern isn't necessarily the O-line or James Robinson. My concern is Urban Meyer. And you've got Brian Schottenheimer's there, basically running what was Seattle's offense to some level last year, which involved a lot of slamming Chris Carson up the middle and them trying to figure out how to get the ball to DK Metcalf. This team doesn't have a DK Metcalf. And Trevor Lawrence is a rookie. He's not Russell Wilson yet. I don't know what we're going to get out of this. And if Urban's trying to flex his game plan on Brian Schottenheimer, that's going to really concern me. And I think it's going to stunt the entire offense. Really need to see something from a play calling standpoint from this group to feel even remotely comfortable with any of those parts. Let's see. This is a comment from our Adams, Kelsey. Who do we take in the first round? You can get Adams and Kelsey, so you don't have to choose depending on your draft position. Well,
I very much do not think you're going to be able to get both.
If you're picking at 12, or if you're in a 10-man league picking at 10, you can get both. If you're in a 12-man league picking at 12, you're maybe.
Adams is getting pushed right now. Again, this is all averaged out, but average draft position right now for Devontae Adams is 6th overall, and Kelsey is 8th. But even to that regard, even to my ranks, I don't think both should. One of those, if one is going to fall, it's possibly Kelsey. Adams is going to be locked in, I think, for most people as the wide receiver 1.
If you're in a draft, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, go ahead.
But if you're in a draft and running backs go with the top 7 picks, and you can get yourself Adams and Kelsey instead of taking the 8th, 9th, and 10th running backs there, you do it. Take the number 1 players at the position. Don't take the 9th or 10th guys at the position because that's ridiculous. Always take the positional advantage. I love the idea of getting Adams and Kelsey if you can. It's getting tougher and tougher because those ADPs are moving up and up. Mm-hmm. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's...
No, perfect. Works for me.
Let's see. Here we go. So we got another one here. Question. Who are your top 5 current best head coaches, agnostic of roster and age? It's actually a really good question. I like this.
Urban Meyer, Pete Carroll, Dan Campbell.
Best head coaches? You got Urban Meyer?
Yeah.
He's in my bottom 5. He's in my bottom 5.
So we got probably Belichick, Tomlin. I like Bruce Arians back in Arizona. I don't care about them just going out there in the Super Bowl. Bruce Arians, Andy Reid. I really like Shanahan over there in San Francisco. I'll say, like, I'm a big Cowboy guy. I think Mike McCarthy's an idiot. He does the McCarthy name very not proud at all. But Tomlin's got to be my favorite coach in terms of a culture he builds for that team. That if I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I want Tomlin coaching my team for the next, I don't know, 15, 20 years. That's probably gonna be my favorite if you got to ask. But those are probably, like, in there in some regard. Yeah.
All right. Here's my group. So
go ahead.
I'm gonna go Andy Reid as my number 1.
Okay.
I'm gonna take Wild Bill Belichick as number 2 because last year was rough. We'll see what he does this year to maintain the spot. Right? Can't argue with the rings. Homer pick. Give me Kyle Shanahan. I don't love his 2-minute play calling in any given game, but hard not to love him. The other guys that might surprise you here, I like Kevin Stefanski over in Cleveland.
That's him and Sean Payton were the honorable mentions for me.
Yeah, I got him. Sean Payton was an honorable mention for me, and so is Robert Saleh. But I also like Brian Flores down in Miami.
Yeah, those are all excellent.
And so that's a great question. I really like that. Just going fully roster and age agnostic. How about these 4 rookie quarterbacks? Talent. This is eye test in the preseason. Do you like Justin Fields? Do you like Mac Jones? Trey Lance? Zach Wilson? Who's your guy?
Not in that group. Trevor Lawrence, because everyone has really forgotten about him, and it's very understandable because Jacksonville is a disaster. The one who has impressed me the most from the eye test is probably Fields, and I think that is for everyone. He is just, as you said, he has really outplayed Andy Dalton in every single regard. But I say Mac Jones and Zach Wilson, I think, are much further along because they weren't like Lance and Fields can be just on pure talent and pure what they can do both on both sides, rushing and passing the ball. Wilson and Jones feel a lot more comfortable in those at under center than I thought they would be. So those whole teams, I'm very optimistic about this quarterback class a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. When I look at this group and I see just, eye test, right? What did we get to see, regardless of playing against 2s or 3s or whoever they were playing against? I really loved what Mac Jones brought to the field. He might be the number 1. Zach Wilson was my lowest graded quarterback out of this group during the draft process. He's my number 2. Then I like Fields, and it's not that I dislike Fields compared to the other guys. He's incredible, but they're all so damn good. It's just a matter of those other 2 guys were more natural in the pocket, better pure passers. They were moving the chains more frequently. And then Trey Lance, Lance, like I said, he's not a finished product yet. This guy needs a little bit more seasoning. You can see the talent. It flashes. It's there. But he needs, you got to season him up. You got a little Salt Bay.
You know of Salt Bay.
Oh yeah, dude.
You're not as old as I thought.
Even my advanced age, I got the little gray here. It's okay. But yeah, so I think for me, it's going to be Jones, Wilson, Fields, Lance in that order. But I also love Trevor Lawrence. People just expect him to be the guy coming out, so he's not getting any love. But he looks really, really good too, and he might make Marvin Jones a thing in fantasy. Mark that one down.
It's just Jacksonville, man. That team.
I know. I'm just saying. Let's see. We got a comment here. Hey, prayers to all the folks impacted by the hurricane. Absolutely. Hopefully they keep this thing under control and that the storm kind of calms down before it hits landfall.
Yeah, I'm very worried.
Looks pretty rough right now. Question: Big Ben's arm, it looks bad in the preseason? Question mark. Yes. And this is just me watching Big Ben for the last 15, 16 years here. When I see him throwing in practice and I see the videos coming out from practice and I catch a couple of the pregame warm-up throws, the ball doesn't have any zip. It's just not there. It really doesn't explode out of his hand anymore. It looks really like he's trying to push the ball out of his hand, and that's pretty terrifying.
And that's really the word I was going to use also is zip, is that it's still traveling in the air. He still has the mechanics to put football in air to hands of receiver. Yes.
He's not rolling it to them. I mean, he's not.
But he did at one point was able to have a cannon. He was able to do the big yard throws. That one, I can't remember it was a brand account that put like, he still got I think it was FanDuel, but they're like, he still got the cannon. I'm like, that was like 10 yards underthrown, and the safety doesn't know where he is right now. He needs a minute. Like, that's why that pass was not taken the other way for 6. So that's just like with Cincinnati, where I like Boyd underneath because I don't think they're gonna have time to throw. I think if Juju is the only player who Ben can literally complete a pass to, I think that's who I prefer as well.
It could be him or Deontay. A lot of chatter about Juju going to the perimeter during regular season games. We'll see. Deontay was the target leader in the clubhouse, and he was phenomenal according to Matt Harmon's reception perception in terms of getting open against man and zone. So, but either way, it's going to be whoever's in the slot is going to be the guy for Pittsburgh because Ben just can't put it up. Let's see what else we have here. We have Jeff. Do you think Shanahan made a mistake drafting Lance? Remains to be seen. I don't think it's a mistake. I think you drafted Lance with the understanding that you had Garoppolo. The team could be, even though we traded up and we gave away a bunch of picks, giving away the picks actually works out in the Niners' favor in some level because that's salary cap space they don't have to account for next year when we've got to re-up Nick Bosa. We just re-upped Fred Warner. We got Kittle's contract got reworked. We're going to have Garoppolo's money coming off the board when we go to, add to our secondary. So there's going to be, some moves for the 49ers over the next couple of years. I think as Lance matures after this season, we're going to see more of that guy that everyone's hoping he is right now. That Mahomesian type of a player. And I think it's super unfair to give him that comp, but he's exceptionally talented. He can run, he can evade pressure, he can throw it. He can do a little bit of everything. I do want to see his intermediate accuracy. I want to see a little bit more touch. A couple of things I want to see get cleaned up, but he's going to be a great player. I don't think it's a mistake.
Listen, we've seen it happen before where players, we saw it with Alex Smith and Jimmy G. We saw it with Alex Smith and Mahomes. Like, it's just, there's like a weird family tree here where the next guy who takes over could just go out and explode. And again, this is just me putting on the tinfoil hat, but listen, you say we're not, it's a weird comparison to have for Mahomes and Lance. Again, I've just been on the same train with you where it's like, I don't think they're on any sort of regard to go out and play Lance anytime soon. If they start losing games, sure. But when the team was fully healthy, this was a Super Bowl contender. And then last year, no one was healthy. So.
Right. Yep. I think only the Giants had more players on injured reserve than the 49ers last year?
You could have told me the 49ers had the most injured reserve players in NFL history, and I would have believed you.
Yeah. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Let's see. What else do we have here? We have some more comments here, and then we'll dart out. Hey, Jeff, shout out to your Roger Craig jersey in the back. He's one of my favorite running backs to watch. His shiftiness is like a combo of Barry Sanders and Lev Bell. I love Roger Craig. Everyone needs to know that Roger Craig was Christian McCaffrey before Christian McCaffrey. He was
you did tell me that. I just learned about this player 2 days ago when you talked to me about it because I don't watch football.
The first guy in the NFL to go 1,000. He caught 100 balls as a running back. Those great 49ers teams of the 80s and early 90s with Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. And Roger Craig was a huge part of that. Got to honor him up here on the wall. I've got Montana back over there. He's just not in the corner where you get to see him. So this room's all decked out. I've got a gazillion jerseys in here because I'm a psycho. Let's see. We've got, hey, Jeff, I picked up Evans. Henry's backup last year, but he hasn't shown that he's good at football. I think Matt would rather pick up, Tavon and McKissick and Damien Williams, right?
Damien Williams right now is one of my favorite. That's actually a write-up coming out for Fantasy Pros that they asked, what was your favorite last round running back type pick? And my real alleyway with him is, and I think it's very hard to say Aaron Evans is a bad football in 5 games played and only 14 career carries. So let's hold on that one. Damien Williams, I think he just needs Cohen or Montgomery to not be successful or hurt in their roles from a step in. He doesn't need both of them. He's not handled to work and handle all that workload as well. But we've seen that this team wants to have, by desire and by necessity, only one running back. We saw that Montgomery last year, 71% of the team snaps led the percentage for any running back in the NFL. And Tariq Cohen, they paid him all that money because they like that role. Even if Cohen is not healthy enough to fulfill that role is desired for the Chicago Bears offense. So if Cohen is not 100% back from the ACL tear, currently that's what they're looking like in camp. If Williams shows up and is the better guy, and he is one of the healthiest players in running at running back position currently right now because he didn't play in all of 2020. He's one of the healthiest players in the NFL, period. So he's rested and ready to go. And he hasn't had a lot of workload on his history. He's only 400 carries in his career. So That's why I like him. It's just a matter of I don't think he's going to get hurt real quick.
Right. Yeah, and I'm kind of on that same train. I think that's fine. Matt, love your Tomlin shout out. He's a culture in all caps builder rather. Let's see. That's why I love the Steelers. Jeff, love your Stefanski shout out. He's resurging that awful Cleveland team. Love the shout out. Appreciate that one. Let's see. We got the last one here from NBA Rigged. Hey, I thought Big Ben in preseason passed an air yard bomb to Claypool down the sideline, the one that we thought Claypool strained his shoulder on. Is that not deep enough? I don't think that was Big Ben. I believe that was Mason Rudolph on that throw.
And even to that regard, it won't take me, even as I'll say this, one bad underthrown pass where FanDuel says he's got the cannon. It's just, you see enough work and you look at the age and it's just, you don't see the ball come out of his hands with that same zip that he had.
Sure.
Over a month long, a few months period down the line, that's when I start getting worried about, is he just not going to be able to hold up for the season? And again, I do think he's undervalued. I have him in a lot of Superflex leagues. So if he goes wrong, I'm kind of screwed. So it's kind of like, I'm hedging against myself and saying, like, listen, I have a lot of exposure to this player. I have a lot of exposure to this player, and I'm still not very confident in how successful he's going to be, which I think is the fairest way to analyze a player.
Sure. Well, with that, I think we're a little over time today. We want to thank everyone for the questions. NBA Rigged, we're looking at you, my man. Julia, we're sorry we missed you. We didn't see you here towards the back end of the show. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope everyone else that listens or views is enjoying the show, getting something out of it. Definitely hit the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up, like it, the whole bit. Find us on Twitter at Gridiron Rating, or Matt, you got at Methodical1. For me, Jeff, at NFL_DiMatteo. We are absolutely here to help you out. This isn't an advice-driven industry, as Matt always likes to say, and we are here to give you that advice. So hit us up if there's anything you need. Leave us some comments, good, bad, or ugly. We're happy to help. Matt, anything else you want to send us out on?
Bye.
Be safe, NOLA. You guys take care. Bye now.